Welcome to the Animal Agenda. I'm Tom Kiesche, and today we have two guests. The first, Jill Deshay of Out of the Cage. That's spelled Outta. And our second guest, Nikki Daniels of K9 Kismet. That's with the letter K and the number 9. Out of the Cage website states that their mission is to get shelter animals seen as individuals so we can find them their forever families. And K9 Kismet's website describes them as the little rescue with a big heart. If you're not driving, you can put a .org on the end of either one of their names and find their web pages. But again, not while you're driving. I'm going to have them introduce themselves in a second, but before that, let me get some disclaimers out of the way. While I volunteer at several shelters inside of several municipalities and have volunteered alongside of both Jill and Nikki, I'm speaking and asking questions as an individual in my own individual capacity. I've known both of them for some time, and they have pulled several dogs I've worked with or showcased on my social media. I should also mention that Nikki and I are working along with others to move a feature film forward that we believe will help shelter dogs. Lastly, both rescues are 501c3 not-for-profits. Hello, Jill and Nikki.
Hi.
Is there anything that I've said up to this point that needs to be clarified by either one of you, or would you like to expand upon anything before we move on to introducing you and your rescues?
Good. You nailed it.
Perfect. All right. So Daniels comes before Deshay. Jill comes before Nikki, but K9 comes before Outta, so we'll start with Nikki. Nikki, tell us about K9 Kismet, yourself, and how long you've been addicted to helping animals.
So I am the executive director of K9 Kismet. We are foster-based, volunteer-run. We are based in Long Beach, California. I got started in 2018 after I adopted a puppy from K9 Kismet. Our rescue focuses on helping dogs that are deemed less adoptable at the shelter. So that can be health, age, emotional state, or breed.
Perfect. Jill, same question.
Yeah, almost same answer. I mean, we are a local on the ground rescue. Out of the Cage really does focus on at-risk dogs in Southern California shelters, including medical dogs, senior dogs, and long-term stay large breed dogs. And there are plenty of all of those, sadly, and we're doing the best we can.
Both of you, I believe, are foster-based rescues. So, Jill, do you want to explain what the difference between foster-based and facility-based would be?
Yeah, facility-based rescues are rescues that actually have properties, usually with kennels and some infrastructure where they can house animals, most of whom have been in the shelter. So they've got a ready-made facility where they can actually take animals when they jailbreak them from the shelter. Whereas foster-based rescues are rescues that rely on the kindness of people who will take dogs or cats into their homes and nurture them and feed them, and in many cases get them back to health and help them overcome the trauma of a kennel-based shelter and get them back to the dogs we know that they are. So they're private citizens that are doing this out of the goodness of their hearts.
Nikki, what type of animals do you take on? Is it exclusively dogs?
Yes, we are a dog rescue specifically. We also take in dogs that are at risk of euthanasia at the shelter, or dogs that are being overlooked by adopters that are walking into the shelter. So for us, oftentimes the dogs we're taking in are seniors. Similar to Jill, we take in adult dogs that have medical needs that maybe are deemed, those dogs are deemed, there's a cost prohibitive, there's a barrier there, and folks are intimidated by that. So we take those dogs in, we help them get the care that they need. Dogs that have gone with what we say, they've got deferred maintenance that we need to address to get them back on the road to a forever home.
How about you, Jill? Just dogs?
Yeah, just dogs for us too. There's plenty of great cat and hamster and reptile rescues out there as well.
So that is a question I wanted to touch on. If someone's looking for an animal, but a small rescue like you doesn't cover what they're looking for, how do they find an appropriate rescue? Say I want to find a rescue Chihuahua or Dachshund. How would one go about that? Either one of you.
It's ironic because we have a Dachshund and a Chihuahua in our rescue right now, which is like never heard of. But, actually our response to that is, look, we can scout for you. Just because we focus on long-term stay dogs and large breed dogs and seniors and medical dogs doesn't mean we can't find you a really nice min pin, for instance. So when people will often call us and say, and I had this conversation today with a guy who really wants a min pin. And I said, I will scout. We're at the shelters all the time. Nikki is too. We'll find one for you, and we will.
Both of you have pulled from a variety of shelters that I have volunteered at. Nikki, I know you're based in Long Beach, but you pulled a dog from Baldwin Park. Are there any other shelters that you, Nikki, and K9 Kismet go to?
Yes, we're partnered with LA County, OCAC, down into San Diego, Kern County, San Bernardino. Primarily, we stay local to Long Beach. The last few years, because every shelter has such great need. It used to be that we would go looking for those dogs that needed us, regardless of the shelter they were at. Now there are dogs that need us in every shelter. So we could pull all day from Long Beach, and there'd still be more that need rescue support.
Jill, I have seen you literally at just about every shelter that I volunteer at. Sometimes you're there the day after I get there or the day before I get there, or I see you in the parking lot, which is amazing how many times that happens. So do you want to run down some of the shelters that you pull from?
Yeah, we're pretty much partnered with every shelter. LA City, LA County. We don't really go to San Bernardino and, Yoruba Valley and some of those areas, only because we like to say that we'd rather be in the shelter than on the freeway. So some of the shelters that are a little bit more far afield are shelters that we let other rescues cover. But pretty much LA City, LA County, and Ventura County are kind of the three counties that we work with primarily.
You all are both very boots on the ground. I'm not certain if you have rescue dogs that you haven't met, but it seems like you meet almost all the dogs that you adopt or rescue, If you're not able to meet a dog, do you take that dog, or what precautions do you use with that dog?
We make that the exception and not the rule. We just saved 2 medical terriers that had parvo and had an hour to live. And I didn't have the luxury of going in and, seeing what their personalities were like. But like a lot of the dogs that we tend to rescue but don't really have a history with, those 2 terriers with parvo turned out to be purebred Labradoodles. So good news and bad news, right? So we actually did get them parvo treatment, and they're now both parvo free. And I would say that they're probably way more adoptable as Labradoodles than they would have been if they were merely terriers. Sorry, terrier people.
Nikki, do you meet every single dog?
The good majority. So similar to Jill, we do travel to a shelter if we can meet them in advance. 2 members, myself and our foster coordinator, are volunteers at LBACs, so we get to meet every dog and work with them that we're planning to pull from that shelter. But if we don't know them, we work with trusted volunteers, our friends in the community that work with dogs in different shelters, ask them to help us with an assessment, do video for us, get their feedback to help us make a decision if we have a proper foster for that dog.
So 2 quick questions. I got questions from people online, as you both know. What's the percentage of dogs that you each have in boarding?
Good question. I would say right now it's 50-50, which is great for us, considering that it's been almost 100% in boarding at times. But I do want to distinguish, Tom, between boarding and board and train. We don't put dogs in boarding. We only take them to qualified, high quality, reference-based board and train trainers that provide a pretty comprehensive service between training, socialization, assessment, and PS boarding.
Nikki?
We are the same as Jill. So in the sense that we use board and train rather than just a traditional boarding. So we have a couple partners that we work closely with. We know that being at board and train means, great exercise, enrichment. They are working every day with these dogs. They're going on hikes. They're going swimming. It's as close to a home environment as we can provide. And that's really important for us.
This is the Animal Agenda on KPFK. I'm Tom Kiesche, and today we're chatting with Nikki Daniels of K9 Kismet and Jill Deshay of Out of the Cage. We're talking animal rescue from the perspective of two smaller-sized, solid 501c3 nonprofits located in Los Angeles. See, I knew both of you would give that answer, so I set you up. I know you guys. I love how you guys do business, and that's one reason why we're talking today. What's the percentage of fixed animals in your rescue versus non-fixed animals?
All are fixed unless there is a serious medical need for a waiver. And then as soon as, if it's a treatable condition, they are spayed or neutered as soon as they are able to be.
Jill?
Yeah, same here. We do have one unneutered male, but it's only because he's only 12 weeks old. So we'll get that done. He's had his first round of puppy shots, and once he has 3 of those, we'll get him neutered.
So we'll get back to some basic questions later, but the reason why I wanted you both on was there are good rescues with solid business models and some not so good or not so solid. As both of you know, I posted on my Instagram that I was going to have 2 unnamed rescues on and solicited questions that some people might want answered. Several people had questions regarding rescues that have collapsed or have been accused of questionable things. None of us are interested in pointing fingers or gossip, but I believe both of you have had successes in business and now run successful rescues. So I want listeners who may be considering starting a rescue or working with a rescue or networking or fostering or adopting to hear your thoughts as rescuers that operate independently where rescues seem vastly unregulated. So what's the most costly dog you've ever taken in, and how was that paid for? Jill?
I think we may have one in the running right now. He was one of the parvo puppies actually had complications after the parvo treatment, after he was declared parvo free, with the IV line wasn't placed correctly in his leg, and he developed something called vasculitis, which turned into a raging infection. And the vet recommended amputation. And so rather than going that route, we decided to go and get him a hyperbaric oxygen chamber therapy. This is a dog I don't want to lose. He's a 5-month-old Labradoodle. I don't want him to lose his leg. And so we are going every day to Pasadena to a clinic with a hyperbaric oxygen chamber and getting him that therapy every single day until the wound starts to heal. And I'm hoping to save his leg. So is it a project? Absolutely. Is it costing us a lot of money? Yes. Did we get some hefty donations? One of them, thanks to Nikki, by the way, where we got a grant for medical purposes for dogs. So we have that money, and we've been saving it for cases like this one. And, by the time we're done, I'm hoping it doesn't go above 10,000. And we've had more expensive dogs than that, but that's the dog that comes up right now, and he's top of mind only because I'm seeing him every day.
Sure. Nikki?
We've actually had quite a few expensive dogs. We've had a dog we pulled into rescue that had both of his ears almost completely ripped off by another dog in the home, and they were surrendered. We've got Levi right now with us who had an obstruction and needed all kinds of scopes and special treatments to take care of that. We have spina bifida dog. We have all sorts. So Ellie, who was shot by someone and needed care, and now because of being shot and recovering and the stress and the trauma of all of that, she lost an eye. She needs board and train. We just talked about a minute ago to help her get back on track, build her confidence back up, and get ready for a forever home. So we do some more expensive cases, and we raise money through private donors, some community supporters, and then grants.
Yeah, and God bless you, Nikki. I think maybe our most expensive dog ever was a spina bifida dog. And it was a spinal malformation, and surgery might have paralyzed her completely. So she's, walking around really well. It's been 3 years since we rescued her from East Valley Shelter, and she's got a great mom. And that was a lot of neurologist visits.
I love that. I'm sorry.
No, I love it too. How do you remain protected, if something were to happen from the rescue? So some of the questions were, this happened with this rescue and they went under and then the dogs got abandoned. This happened with this rescue, dogs suffered. How do you protect the animals in your rescue from something going sideways? Does that make sense, that question? Jill, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I mean, the funding we have informs the number of dogs we can help, basically. And so we are very planning intensive. We don't pull a dog without a plan, and we don't pull a dog without educating ourselves as much as we can about what that dog will need. And of course, there are always surprises. We did not know that Shelby had spina bifida. We figured she had a disc disease. So yeah, the unpleasant surprises do come up, but we maintain a financial cushion for those and really try to manage our money as best as we can, and not spend it all in one place.
What about you, Nikki?
We're the same, and making sure that we have the funding and other resources, right? Time and volunteers and things that are needed to help support a foster, keep all of our dogs safe and provided with everything that they need. I think that for us, we stay small. We keep our numbers manageable. We are realistic about what we can manage. And that is the ultimate safety net, is not overextending ourselves. So we can be there for the dogs.
It seems like some pitfalls that small rescues fall into is taking too many dogs too fast and not planning for a rainy day. Do you have any advice to a small rescue just starting up?
I think, this comes back for me to meeting the dogs that you save. And I know it's a luxury often, and it does slow things down a little bit when you don't want to commit to helping a dog until you actually go physically to the shelter to meet it. But at the same time, I think it gives you another data point in terms of being able to plan the care for that dog, and the outcome of that dog and how long that dog is going to need, and whether that dog just needs a little bit of socialization or complete rehabilitation. So some of those, are hard data, and some of those are just vibing with the dog and seeing, is this a dog who's shut down, is going to need a lot of time, or is this a dog who totally wants to participate and it's just a matter of getting it out and getting it to safety?
I think it's also...
Go ahead, Nikki.
I think it's also important to pace yourself and find a community. So if you're new, if you're already starting a rescue, reach out for rescues that are close by, that are established, and spend some time with them. Ask if you can take them to coffee and pick their brain. We're here for each other. I know I called Jill and will ask to bounce ideas off Jill and get her insight. Because we don't always think of everything. Sometimes when it's really close, it's harder for us to see the big picture when we're standing that close to it. So I think find a community is really important, and breathe. Just breathe. Don't respond too quickly. Don't be too emotional. Remember, you're making a commitment to be an animal's guardian. You need to be ready for it to the best of your ability. Of course, there are always surprises.
You're listening to The Animal Agenda on KPFK. I'm Tom Kiesche, and today we have Jill Deshay of Out of the Cage and Nikki Daniels of K9 Kismet. We're talking about some of the do's, don'ts, and maybe even some of the doles of animal rescue. So, do rescues compete or do they collaborate?
I think it depends on the rescue. I am all about collaboration. I think Jill and I both are. So I want to reach out to folks and surround myself, right? People that are smarter than I am, that know more than I do. I'm always wanting to learn. And but sadly, there's some ego in rescue. And I think that is a challenge that some need to overcome. And I hope that they do, because it gets you in a tricky spot.
Yeah, I just had an interesting conversation a couple weeks ago with the rescue coordinator at Baldwin Park. We had planned on pulling a dog from there, and she called me and she said, "Don't be mad at me." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because another rescue came and got the dog." And I said, "Is it a good rescue? Do you respect the rescue?" And she said, "Oh yeah, no, they're great." And I'm like, "Well, yippee, yay,
Right.
So we can save another." Right. And she said, "Oh, thank God." She said, so many people would yell at me for that. And it's like, you're kidding. Right. I mean, there are just way too many dogs to go around right now. So I felt bad. I felt bad for her because she thought we would be angry. And I felt bad that there are actually rescues that would have held a grudge.
There are. So, what sort of research should people do on rescues before they decide to foster or adopt through a rescue? Because there's good ones, there's not so good ones. What research would you say you should find out blank? Go ahead, Nikki.
I don't know if there's any one thing specifically, but check their website, check their social media, read up on them, see if their philosophies align with yours. If you're interested in fostering, reach out, fill out an app, get a phone interview. I think talk with the rescuers. That phone interview is as much for the foster as it is for us, right? I think rescues want to see fosters be successful. So ask all the questions that you want. In fact, even ask for references if you want to know what the rescue is all about. Feel free to ask those tough questions and ask what others are saying about them.
Jill?
I think there are also some really good online resources where you can check out rescues. Websites like GuideStar, for instance, where you can actually look at a rescue's financials. I don't think it's a coincidence that some of the rescues that you were referring to earlier, Tom, that kind of bailed on their dogs, didn't have great GuideStar ratings or didn't file their data at all. So I think it just is an outside source to show rigor, frankly.
Is there any events that you have coming up that the public, the listeners, can know about, either online or in person? Jill?
We've done more adoption events this year. I don't know about you, Nikki, but we've done more adoption events this year than ever. And not because we want to, because as you guys know, they're a lot of work. But we're doing them. And our next one is at Nectar of the Dogs, which is a wine purveyor up in Simi. They're very rescue friendly, and they give a portion of their proceeds to their rescue partner every year, which is Out of the Cage. And so on December 15th, we're having our final adoption event with them for 2024.
Nikki?
We are doing a lot of events this year, too. It seems like more than in the past. We've got one we're working on with Pet Supplies Plus in Long Beach. It's being finalized, but we will post all of that on our social media for you. But I believe it's going to be December 8th here in Long Beach, to be confirmed by the weekend.
So one thing about these interviews is they go much faster than you intend them to go. And we're getting towards the end. Jill, do you have a favorite quote?
So my favorite quote is Aristotle said, all living beings are ensouled and striving to participate in the universe. I'm a dabbler when it comes to vegetarianism and veganism. And sometimes when I have the choice of eating meat or not eating meat, I remember that quote, all living things are ensouled and striving to participate in the universe. And I usually have salad after that.
How about you, Nikki?
How about a dog-related one? If the kindest souls were rewarded with the longest lives, dogs would outlive us all. And that's Ricky Gervais.
Good one.
That is
anything he says is
it's brilliant.
Genius,
yeah.
Right. Oh my God. I'd follow that man anywhere.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. But if you're both willing, I'd like to continue this conversation on a second show. Are both of you up for that?
Let's do it.
Super. So we have to wrap this up. My name is Tom Kiesche, and you've been listening to the Animal Agenda on KPFK, 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, or streaming online at kpfk.org every Wednesday at 2:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Our guests this week have been Nikki Daniels of K9 Kismet and Jill Deshay of Outta the Cage. You can find them both online on their social media and their websites. It's K9, like the letter and number, and Outta, like Outta, like we're out of here. Special thanks to producer Marlena Bond. If you have questions, suggestions, or want to know more, write comments at kpfk.org or the Animal Agenda's Facebook page. You can listen to past episodes at kpfk.org/archives for 59 days after the airing, or find them and potentially extended interviews at the Animal Agenda page on SoundCloud. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Nikki and Jill.